we're back with an impromptu live. It's impromptu, right? It's off the cuff. I was doing other things, and then other things happened. I said, "Oh, maybe we'll talk about this for a little bit." Right? That's how sometimes it goes. I want to talk, but then as I'm running into other issues that I got to do. I got to be responsible. I got to make more content. I've got to edit the content. I need a couple more versions of me. But I'm sitting here and going over, videos and little topics that I wanted to make. And we're still gonna do the bigger live stream. We're gonna do that with the bells and whistles. We're gonna try to do it for Sunday, right? The Sunday is gonna be Sunday on the CST, this on the CST Eastern time board, that 7, 8 o'clock slot. I think those do well. For the sake of those do well. But sometimes we gotta sneak in an impromptu, right? We know people watching, know people watching. Right? Oh, what's going on, man? We're gonna be doing a little bit of talking, right? I'm glad you made this one. Do a little talking about some hit pieces, right? The hit pieces on the Manosphere and what people have to say, specifically mainstream, and how their ideas of or why they're basically putting hit pieces. It's my opinion though. It's what I'm thinking. It's when I'm doing a bit of this work, some stuff I'm coming across and getting kind of curious, right? Get kind of curious. But I'm on the go, um, moving and shaking. So we're trying to, it's not my normal space, but the show must go on. So we see a bunch of videos coming up that are from the hotel. That's where I'm at right now. But it's not important. Don't stress it. Let me know if you can hear me because I got a little mobile setup going. Get right into it. What's going on? Let you back in. How's the audio sound? Give me a thumbs up if it sounds any good. I'll get moving and shake. So if you haven't seen the Netflix's latest like piece on the Manosphere, like Louis Theroux, he went out and he did interviews with a bunch of people, and they labeled it the Manosphere, right? I think it was HS Tiki Taki, Myron Gaines, and that sort of crew. They they made appreciate that. They made a real quick piece, right? They said real quickly, and I watched it and I had to pause it a lot while I was watching. I was screaming at the screen, like, what the hell are we talking about? But I guess the manager means different things with different people, and depending where you were in life when you came across it, when you came across the content. One of the things that we all kind of notice is depending on your age. When you came across, you kind of linked up with certain creators. Their message resonated more with you rather than some others. Young people are going to kind of go towards those young things, right? You have a lot of influencers that started with pranks and jokes and evolved that to manosphere content. But it's an easy, low hanging fruit when you kind of just screaming about how evil women are and look at this, or some evolved from pickup artists and came across and said, okay, well, this is kind of adjacent. We can acknowledge that there's a almost like a pipeline from influencer, i.e., pranks, pickup artist, whatever, to manosphere, to then grifted and sell you courses that you don't need. I've packaged all this information here, and you're gonna sit here and listen to blah 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 blah. Give me buy this program for $5,000, and then boom, we're gonna keep it moving. So and then the last part we're watching now is like almost like political pundit, right? You're coming on here and you're being like conservative, right wing, and I think this is when mainstream media started paying more attention, where they came in and said, "Hold on, I want to talk about this," right? Yeah. Um, do this with Levi Streamer too. What is that? Let me know. Pretty right. Appreciate that. Yeah, this stream is going to be more like we can interact rather than I've got an entire show of production got to put on and making sure I don't fat finger something and then you guys see my corn collection that I don't know why people keep that up while they're alive, but I want to be able to have more of a back and forth. So if you guys say something in the chat, I'm going to make sure I take a look. But if you super chat something, I can definitely see it. So we can acknowledge there's a pipeline. There's a guiding rod that seems to go from smaller channel to the Manosphere, piggybacking on that, and then influencer, where now here's a car, here's a beautiful woman, here's all the things you always wanted to have, but you could never have because here I am. I've got it. It's not for you. Um, yeah, there's a lot of stuff mixed in with the mainstream, right? We're not gonna deny that, or we're not gonna like to pretend like they're not making points. One of the things that troubles me is when you pick is who you decide to say is manosphere. We don't want to talk about the people that, oh, the message is something as simple as saying, yo, you got to do better, right? As a man, you got to do better. Right? And I almost hate that phrase, and like, as a man, right? As a man. But when I came in, or when I was influenced, when I started seeing, okay, I'm listening to this message, it's eat the meat, spit out the bones. It's, yo, you want better options in life. You gotta improve. Okay. I've kind of always known that. I just thought I was somehow special and stumbled upon this, and only me and my crew really knew it and understood it. No, we all get that. You want better out of life, you got to do better. You got to put in work. You have to show up. You have to do the boring things day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out. That's it. No big secret. But now, hearing that pushed, I was like, okay, this is something. This is part of the secret sauce that the really the people that really have success really do. Not like the influence saying I get up at 3:30 in the morning and then I do a soulful meditation while doing a prayer bath or some nonsense like that. I'm not talking. We're just saying that consistency over time is kind of what wins the day. I didn't really necessarily think at the time that that was a manosphere sort of message, but that was one of the things that a couple creators I was looking at said, okay, this is what you guys have in common. I like it. When you start talking about, now you look at other creators, right? The ones that the media, mainstream media usually uses as examples for um, what's wrong with the space, right? Shout out to everyone in the chat. Love seeing you guys here, especially those that got the messages late that you guys still showed up. I really, really, really appreciate that. Um, you guys really, really. When you look at people that have already been controversial, right, and kind of already had consequences for the things that they said, right? Be it Sneeko, be it HS Tiki be it Myron Gaines. Um, Several of these people already had platforms demonetized, especially on YouTube. YouTube, lets you go so far until it smacks you back down and says, "Yo, enough of that. Enough of that. You that's that's no longer a thing. That's not something they're gonna sit here and tolerate." This is all I have to worry about in my life. Yeah, plenty. Right? Just because I can multitask and take care of this, take care of that, take care of that. I think if you actually knew me, you'd be like, "Oh, yeah, you do quite a bit." But again, yo, um, so when you highlight these type of people, the worst that have already been sort of demonetized for their behavior, for their commentary, right? Then we sort of understand you've gotten that consequence. When you're trying to make a point, when the mainstream media, I think when the mainstream media came in, right, they came in at the point where they started seeing it, how the effects of it in terms of, say, election, how you saw that the young were moving towards the right, moving towards the conservative right. When you have the pockets of mainstream media that tend to lean left and the pockets that tend to lean right, I think anyone with a brain can kind of see how it sort of sticks loose these days, where left leaning media was like saying, hey, something has to be done about this because we're losing this section of voting. We're looting this section of the populace who, well, we kind of need to stay in business. Same thing with the right. They used it in a different sense of saying, okay, this is what's happening naturally. Relationships are one part of it, but influence and commodity become another. Where these people moving, depending where they're going to vote, depending where they're going to spend their money, or how we can then spend their money, who then can put us in office. As consumers, as the customers, sometimes we lose sight of how further along a lot of this actually ends up being. Our timeline for these things are much smaller. where we somehow we're only thinking about it in terms of, well, what's right in front of me. Versus if you're a political party, you're thinking about these things on a longer timeline. What's going on, Jazz? You're thinking about these things on a longer timeline. You're thinking about how do I win the next election, not just presidential, but how do I win midterms? How do I win locally? Well, you get those by understanding that you, as a singular organism, are not the end all be all. We're going to be running this race for a longer period of time. So, who you can get leaning one way or another is important. It's why you're constantly targeting the youth. It's why you're constantly trying to influence the youth. So, mainstream media kind of believed in their own hype for too long, and there was no reason to not. You had the reins forever. There was only one way to consume media, and that was through the TV and between through the corporations. This is what we have to say. This is what we have to show you. You sat there, you had to listen. Right? If TV became ubiquitous and everyone's not a routine. Everyone's more in a routine, right? TV was so ubiquitous, we flattened it, we increased the resolution, we started putting it everywhere. We put it in your fridge, put it on your phone, we put it in mirrors. Right? We put it everywhere because we understood this is how we consume. If this is how we consume, well, this is how we influence you. If I can tell you that this bread is better than that bread, and you believe it, and I watch as you buy my overpriced bread, but I say it's artisanal, right? Then you buy it. Simple. But what happens when you start having more democracy, more voice, more challenges to that authority? Well, you first, as anyone in power, you think it's a fad because you've watched fads come and go. It's been nothing. It's just it happens all the time. Now you find yourself on this other side where, wow, we're losing a lot of attention. We're losing a lot of viewers, right? And the data's there, right? The Nielsen ratings, the money from movies, all this, it's on a decline. As yes, the economy changes, a lot of luxuries become not important. Hey, I don't care about you know going to the strip club when I'm fighting for my life out here, when I can't pay the rent, when I've been not being able to pay the rent. Right? I don't care about March Madness when I'm broke. It doesn't. These things you start to like any type of organism that's attacked. You start to pull back. Start to pull back from your spending. So they start paying attention. Where are these people's eyes? They're online. Right? YouTube becoming the biggest platform. Creators for watchers, entertainment, everything. Everyone's on YouTube. Okay. Everyone's streaming. Okay. But who's everyone? It's the youth. The Republicans, what do they do? They immediately say, cool, got it. Not immediately, but they jump on and they launch a lot of their campaigns online. And large for large part, they've got success. So when you want to affect or talk to these people, hey, when you want to go to these, this is what you have to do. You know, I don't. Yeah, when you're broke, I don't know how you're out there saying I'm about to spend. I'm about to spend. Is that even an effective strategy? Almost like you go when you're hungry, going shopping, going grocery shopping. You know you're going to come back with a bunch of stuff that you are going to regret in the next 15 minutes. Sounded good at the time though. So yeah, if I'm broke, I don't care about these other luxuries. I don't care about these other things. Right? Strippers have a great idea, a hold on a, they got their thumb on the pulse of the economy because they see how people are coming in, how they're spending money, how they're not spending money. They can watch that change happen. We kind of see it all. So what's important here is when you want to go and affect the youth, what do you do? Where do you go? You got to go where they are. You got to go where their eyes are. Now, because you were so slow to respond to that change, now you have to say, okay, how do I now remove that influence? And that's always been a difficult thing. That's always been a difficult thing to do, to take influence from here, remove it, and place it somewhere else. Well, one of the easiest things to do is to vilify whatever else that you want to sort of destroy. You want to say, look at and say, okay, you know, I'm going to move it over here. I'm going to vilify it. I'm going to use the thing that I deem it to be the most disgraceful, the most disgusting thing. If you're thinking about it, it's usually they say it's Nazi. It's Nazi. That's how they pull. That's how they break the whole law. No one wants to be a Nazi except those that do want to be Nazis. Not talking about that. You do that, and then you get people on the side over here. So when you see hit pieces, like anything else, the same thing with um, this vegetarian, this vegan propaganda. Well, how do we make this happen? How do we make this make sense? Well, we make meat evil, right? And we make meat evil by talking about how it's produced, how the evils of how it's produced, how they're held, the sort of way the pins are, how unsanitary it is. And then we talk about how it's spoiled, how it's full of all these nasty, awful things we put out there, and then we make the parallels between they're just using this for money. We do our best to vilify it. Then we make parallels to your health. We say eating a piece of bacon is equivalent to smoking 3 cigarettes a day. Right? And this was on that Netflix documentary, What the Health. And you're looking at it with a sound mind. You're saying that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. From what we know, from what the data's always showed about smoking, you tell me eating a piece of bacon is the same as breathing in tar and nicotine and other poisons into my lungs. No, right? But look at the popularity behind some of these things. The engine behind making something viral. If you watch the piece about the Manosphere, they have a part in there, I think, where HS Tiki-Taki's mom is saying, like, you guys do the same thing. If any of you guys remember or any participate in that DARE program, to keep kids off drugs, there's a part in it where the commercial's there, where the father is confronting the son. He's like, yo, where'd you learn about this? Where'd you get these? There's a kid smoking or something. He's like, yo, I learned it from you, dad. Right? I learned it from you. I was watching I was watching the media, and we learned a lot of the tricks there. The minute you step into the creative side, you start seeing a lot of products, a lot of videos, a lot of content as sort of motivational. You start picking apart the things. You start looking at the transitions. You start looking at J cuts. You start having to understand what any of these stuff are. Right? Yeah. So was it unreal? Yeah, it was a scare tactic. Like scared straight, right? You look at the data behind that, you say, yo, none of this actually works. Kids aren't scared straight. Kids still think, they still smoking in school. They still think um, going to jail is cool, right? And what was a better way, right? What was a better way to remove the influence of me thinking, oh, all this jail stuff is cool? I watched Oz, right? Again, we're dating ourselves. Oz depicted that looked terrible, looked absolutely terrible. But when you get these, I'm saying all this to highlight how effective media is in influencing what you think. Maybe sometimes it's not immediate, but down the line, it'll get you there. It'll get you to the point where you're no longer thinking the most important thing is the content. No, it's where your eyes are now. So when you look at the piece, right? When you look at the Netflix thing, and they had the other show they made, and they heavily used the Manosphere. The young boy, ended up killing his girl again in UK, and they had this piece about the Manosphere in there, and they try to like kind of pigeonhole that in there, and it became obvious. It's almost like as if you heard about the Manosphere, you read about it, but you never really looked at it for yourself with a more critical eye. To be fair, again, Louis Theroux says the fringe elements. You're making a piece about the manager, and you look at the fringe elements behind it. You look at the worst of it. Well, you can do that with anything. You can do that with the church. You can look and say there's fringe elements in the church, and you can focus on their wanton, abuse, and then the cover-ups, this, successful, subsequent cover-ups of that abuse, and then you can use that. Will you try to use that, and you want to try to use that and somehow think that this is the entirety of it, this is the whole? No, you know. Listen, if you can, Blair's in the chat say he can't hear me, but I think everyone else can. So Blair, if you can't hear me, just kind of, I guess, reset, close out YouTube and open up again. So if you look at the worst things of a thing, And we can look at the Black community where you look at the stereotypes. When you have an opinion as a Black woman, you are an angry Black woman. When you are a man, they say they automatically think you're a thug. But when we look at the crimes that we pin or attach to certain communities, you don't tend to do that with others, right? I appreciate it. You can hear me. So Blair, it might just be you. So you don't look at white people and say, well, you're predominantly PDFs, and you think every white man you see is touching someone. No, we don't do that. It's we have to be careful about how these things are labeled, and a lot of that labeling is through media. That's why mainstream media is sort of in a panic. You can look at it and you can see the indicative of this because they keep making some of these pieces. You want to vilify something because to me, it shows that you're a little afraid of it. You're a little afraid of it. And again, it's about attention because attention is critical. Attention is going to determine why this matters, why any of this matters, and its importance. So I think for a lot of men, I just talk about the manosphere. For a lot of men, the manosphere was in the original when its original concept was a way for men to come together and share their sort of experience, to tell you, hey, this is what it was like for me. Because when you're isolated and there's no one to compare notes to, you think it's just you. If it's just you, then it's not really a problem. Right? We could look at Blair right now. He can't hear me. Well, he checked in. I see comments are moving. That means people can hear him. Might just be me. If he didn't say anything, he just thought it was just me. And he kept on going. This is why we have the community. This is why you have the space. This is what the master was about. That people can say, hey, this happened to you? Yeah, all my life. Your template that you're talking about is the exact same thing that happened to me. We just happen to start comparing ourselves with what's going on with the women. Say, hey, did you try it? You bought the flowers? Yeah. And did you get dunked on by the other dude? Yeah. Did he do half the stuff you did? No. Oh, okay. Right? Did you believe this? Did you watch this? Were you told this? Yeah, 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 yeah. Are you miserable at home? Yeah. Right? Do you not feel like you have any choice, any say in your life, in your marriage? Yeah. Yeah, I do. Do you regret doing all this? Yeah. That was essentially the messaging happened in Manosphere. Yes, there's other positive things. Hey, you should try and lean towards this. Try to do these things. This is what I do to improve my life. Hey, you don't know how to do blah, blah, blah? Reach out. Boom, boom, boom. There were good things that happened, but we don't really highlight those. We like to use it and say, this is bad. You should not consume this. You should not use this as if it's possible to put the genie back in the bottle. As if Pandora can come back and say, my bad, everyone in the box. It's fine. As if the alien tech that gave us microchips can somehow disappear. No, we're not going back. You can't, it's think about someone saying, hey, AI is evil. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. Everyone stop immediately what you're doing. Turn in AI. Get rid of it. Hey, your streaming services, get rid of those two. Those are too disruptive. This is sometimes when we accuse people of being sort of stuck in their ways, being too old, to look and say, hey, can we do better? Can we change things? Or do you think we're trying to move things backwards? We're never going back. I can't think of a collective time as in humanity where we decided we're just going to move things back. We didn't like how this turned out. Okay, cool. My bad. Let's backtrack it. No, there was a study when they looked at men who say if you were driving down the street, you missed your stop. Would you just reverse? Right? Say all this is legal. Would you rather reverse or go around the block? Most men just go around the block. Most people go around the block. Maybe that's too abstract, right? I'm assuming everyone in the chat here drives. But if you don't, think about when you're texting, right? When you're texting, when you're going back and forth, when you're chopping it up, and you make a mistake. You go back, move the cursor over the letter, delete it, put in the right one, and then continue forward, or do you delete the entire thing, write it again, and go about your business? I, you know, I know what I do, and every time I do it, I look at myself and say, "Man, that was not efficient." You do it every time in ways that we're also just kind of wired together to do the very same thing. You can't go back. It's just not what humanity is about. if any of you Star Trek fans, you're supposed to go boldly, right, where no one's gone before. That's what we do. Right? We're not trying to go back. You know, um, depends if it's one way or reversing life's too short. Oh yeah, right. But when it's on a highway, we start looking, say, "Girl, what are you doing?" Right? Right? Don't endanger the rest of us because you want to you want to move this thing back, right? So yeah, I'm done. If it's a life is typically one way. Life is a side scroller, right? It's Mario. It's you're moving along the x-axis, and when you go too far, when that screen moves with you, keeping you right there in the center, you can't go back. Effectively, it's gone. Right? In fact, we know in real life, it just becomes, what's going on. It becomes really easy, right? If you guys are, just jumping in, hit that like, consider donate to the channel, subscribe if you're new here entirely. We want to do this chat so we can have like more back and forth with you guys instead of just running my mouth, running a show, which sometimes becomes difficult to talk to you guys in the chat. So um, you can't go back to a certain extent. Age and time do all these things that prevent you from being able to do it. It's unfortunate, but it's real. You can't just say, "Hey, let me just made the wrong choices here. I kind of want better." That doesn't really happen. You don't get that option. You don't get that luxury. But we just continue on. We see what we can see. We try to make sense of everything. But like I said, sometimes it is what it is. You just kind of you kind of have to deal with it. Make quick adjustments as we're going. So when you want to have these better outcomes, or when they want to come and say, "Hey, we need you back," like men, boys, or people leaning more towards one way, people no longer consuming the way that has enriched our lives forever. We want to come and say, "Hey, you need to come back." What we end up ignoring is what the manosphere, or what certain programs or areas that took your attention away, what they mean to those people, how critical how it changed their lives. One way or another, whether or not you consumed it or not, you cannot escape some of that influence because you're inundated with it. You can, oh, I don't know, but you know how people are. You hear the questions again and again in society. It's getting to the point where you see it's being picked up on mainstream media or by people just a couple steps removed. Now they'll have podcasts about it, or podcasts that were once dedicated to sports. Well, now they'll talk about relational issues because they're seeing that this is popular. Sure. Are they a decade behind, a decade and a half? Yes. But they have the machinery, they have the apparatus to catch up quickly, and they have the ability to basically make pieces countering some of the stuff they're seeing, some of the stuff that doesn't kind of fit their agenda. If anyone grew up, in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, you also saw movies where the older generation is trying to catch up, trying to be cool, trying to find a way to talk to them, talk in their language, talk that way. What do? Right? They try to co-opt what's happening. They try to co-opt the counterculture. Oh, we did. Netflix does that by first making a movie, and then now making a direct sort of hit piece with it. Problem is, you're not addressing why people are entrenched in. You're not addressing that why it makes sense to these people. On some of those, it said something. One of the guys come up and said, I think it was Jason Waller. They were thinking, they was like, "Yo, thank you." Not because they bought his course, but they're looking and said, "Yeah, I got on my grind." When we don't understand sometimes how men communicate, we think I could just say this, and it'll just somehow work. Remember the TV show Married with Children was just a comedy show, right? Now, yes, exactly. One of the things I think Al said with the little group, No Man, they said, "What? Don't try to understand women. Women understand women, and women hate each other." You thought, haha, that was just funny. Ha ha ha. You thought it was funny. And it's like, oh, now today you look and say, that kind of makes some sense. Yeah. 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 A lot of us raised old school. A lot of us raised old school. We kind of look at the world this way. And you come and you're like, yo, you got to do it. You got to put in the effort. But, sometimes you look at a topic, say like the manosphere, and it's an intergenerational thing. So while us older millennials or above, or young or older Gen Z, we understand that you gotta do the work. You don't do the work, you don't get the cheese, you don't get the gold. It doesn't happen. But these younger generation coming up, they feel as if the world needs to bend around them. People need to listen to them. I feel this way, and my feelings need to be justified. They need to be validated. Now, I'm not trying to make the mistake of, the parents in Footloose or Dirty Dancing or take your pick. And I understand that they're going to be the ones that inherit and shepherd the world forward. When we're gone and we're the baby boomers holding on to our wealth, trying to survive for as long as possible, they're going to be shaping the dating scene, political scene. It's going to be their world. At that point, yeah, we can sit back and observe. We can tell the stories of, hey, back in my day, we thought it was difficult. Now look what you got to do. You got to deal with AI. You got to do robots. Robots. A robot stole my boyfriend. I can't wait to make that video if, like, for instance, that ever happens. But I think something like that would be absolutely hilarious. But this is just sort of, right now we're still in firm control of how dating is going, about the dating scene. But there will be a time when we're gone. It's left, and they let the younger generation redefine it. That's why the mainstream media is so concerned. One of the reasons it's so concerned. But when you don't address what it meant to people and what it means to people, how it fixes some of their problems, how it aligns with a lot of their worldview, and we get there's like anything, the fringe elements are bad. The fringe elements were never supposed to make up the whole. It's just the same when I'm telling you, hey, I got a friend that this happened to, singular friend, and I use that as defense to everything I have to say. You should look at me and say, that doesn't work. Right? That doesn't work. Because you know a guy who the aliens abducted along with 3 cows when he was in the field doesn't mean that's happening and that's everyone's experience. I'm not saying it didn't happen to him. I'm saying I would love proof. I would love to see it. But a lot of that advice is useless for the rest of us. Right? I don't own a farm. I haven't been around 3 cars at the same time. But for him, that's his world. That matters. We have to talk to him in that sort of manner if we want to get him on board. What the mainstream media is trying to do is talk to a small slew of people that don't agree with what they have to say, but want to be influenced by it. When you don't look and say, hey, why'd you find yourself in this space? And what does it mean to you? The Manosphere is not a guiding light. It's not a Bible. It's just a way to say, oh, other people are experiencing this. You're not sort of alone in this. Okay, carry on. If you encounter something where you don't know what's supposed to be happening, or you're confused about a subject, what would you do in the past before the internet? You look something up in a Rolodex, not a Rolodex, an encyclopedia. You look at that and say, oh, what's going on here? Oh, here's the information. Okay. What do we do today? You don't know how to do something, you look it up. YouTube University, you go on Reddit, you want to hear stories, you want to feel like you commiserate with someone, just go ahead and go there. You'll see people's experiences. That was the Manosphere, in a place where all these people's experiences are mainly male. You want to sift through that and say, okay, I understand it. Hey, these are the things I'm curious about. This is what I want to do. This is where I go for it. Great. Simple. Right? Get a 5,000 robot. That's the after dark stream, my friend. That is an after dark stream. Right? But if they're doing custom orders, let me know. I'm kind of curious myself. But outside of that, we have to use our, we have to think, what's the purpose of some of the media, why they want you, why they're sort of attacking this, and they're trying to be subtle about it. But this thing, I think they sort of failed. I think they missed the mark. Taking the small anecdotal and then saying the whole batch is rotten. It's not apples. People can see, yeah, we see that behavior over there. To say and attach that and make that person the definition of the entire manosphere and then vilify that person. Well, okay, that becomes easy. And the main consumers, the main public, when they look at this, they're not thinking, oh, let me dig deeper. They're saying, cool, manosphere bad, moving on. What else do you need to? teach me about? What else do you want me to think from, to stop thinking on my own? That's really what's happening. And social media or alternative forms of media was supposed to start letting you know, start making you think, maybe I should start questioning what's being said here. Maybe I should maybe I should start thinking that maybe they're not telling me the truth. That becomes almost commonplace. Right? We look at it in yeah, that's exactly the MO. One bad experience here. Hey, you heard this guy say he's part of the manosphere and he said women shouldn't vote. Women deserve less. Yeah, that doesn't mean the ton of other creators, because he's big in the space, doesn't mean the ton of other creators believe that. Doesn't mean he was voted King Manosphere, King of the Men, he gets to speak for us. He gets to speak or tell people why this is important. And what the media doesn't understand here, specifically Netflix, they're not understanding that a lot of these people are given a lot of grace. They're given a lot of latitude. Yeah, he said that, but the other stuff he said I like. Hey, he said that there's other stuff I like. You see the same thing with the president. Yeah, man, that was effed up, but he says a lot of the stuff I like. And they're cool with that. They're looking at that and say, yeah, we understand people aren't perfect. There's a limit to stuff you can do where it gets to a point where people are like, okay, stop. You think about, say, Andrew Tate. Well, hey, look, he was doing these things. How many people still rock with him? You've done a phenomenal job of selling his image and making him no longer king of the manosphere. But we never, and I know kings aren't elected, but we never got together and say, yeah, that's the royal line. This is the royal line of succession. Because he had attention, they focused on what he was saying. We don't like it. All right, what do we have to do to get him out of pocket? We do it in every aspect of mainstream media, every single aspect. It's an old trick. They're old hats at it. The problem is you just need most of the people paying attention to consume it. Because we take a step back and think about this. And we can see parallels to the election. Whenever you try to say Trump is bad, there's a large swath of people that until you affect their daily lives, they're not moving off the needle. Doesn't matter to them. This person's bad, doesn't matter to them. Biden's bad, doesn't matter to them. Biden's incompetent, doesn't matter. You're not moving people off those needles. That's what they believe. It's tied to identity. So when that identity is either attacked or it needs to be defended, those are the lines. When they made this piece and they're trying to tell people that are diehard supporters of these creators that they shown, nothing really changes. Maybe you pick off a couple percentage points here, maybe, but the same, they just hold steady. That's why some politicians say, I can say anything. I can say anything. I can do anything. It's going to be, if that base is large enough, you're always going to win. Right now, the base of supporters that even when they looked at those fringe elements, it's too large. You're not going to get them out of pocket, out of the way where they suddenly say, oh shit, you're right. Oh shit, I was wrong. I didn't realize because this whole thing made me believe otherwise. As far as documentaries go, it wasn't that good as sort of appealing people away from these things, because the people that have consumed Manosphere content have found themselves, okay, I'll align with that. They probably align with different content curators that you could have thrown, a pebble at, who would have been happy to be on a documentary, at least for the sake of notoriety, of infamy, of just getting their face in people's faces. But we went with the ones that were infamous, or the ones that, hey, you said this, you said this, you're living this sort of lifestyle, and we don't like it, we don't approve of it. Then you go and interview some of these people, you see, yeah, I like some pictures like they were superheroes. Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. Think about how we view, outside of you actually serving, you being a POW, you doing something like that. Nah, man, you just from a family of politicians. Every year we got to hear about, anniversary of your death. And this the point when they went, say, with Jason Waller, I think they went to go see, okay, how you living? They're following him. People stop on the street saying, hey man, thank you, blah blah blah, for whatever reason. Then you go and you meet his wife. He's like, yeah, he's got he goes on dates, I like it this way. You kind of like mind boggle, like, wait, what? Wait a second. You're not supposed to. I'm supposed to be this big expose where I make it look awkward and we do the cuts and we do all this. You have to understand that some people and a growing number of people are fine with not living the way mainstream media says you should live. You think about it in this sort of light. They tell you, no, marriage is good for you. As a man, marriage is good for you. And when you say, these are the reasons why I don't think it's good for me, these are the reasons what's preventing me from buying into the trope, and they just say, nah, man, it's good for you. Well, you're not addressing the issue. You're not addressing what's important. Nah, man, it's good for you. Just do it. This is kind of what they're trying to do. It's kind of a bludgeon sort of attempt. It's not effective, but it's just kind of the only thing that really matters. But we part of the management, part of the evolution of it, part of the R pill. There's that, and this is why I think they harping on it. This is why I think they care so much, because there's a moment in time there when you take Red Pill. Right? We go back to the Matrix. Everyone that didn't see it, shame on you if you didn't see it. You go and there's a part where you take the Red Pill and then you were forcibly ejected from the Matrix machine that's been keeping you alive and draining you of energy, using you as a battery. And there's this reclamation process where you're confused, where you're thinking, these politicians, these heroes that I idolized the entire time, they were Epstein's Island. Now you don't know what to feel, right? Your identity was tied to this. This was your reality. You took a little medicine. Now you woke up and say, damn, this can't be it. This cannot be life. It is. It is. Manosphere, what a lot of that did was take the pedestal away from women and say, wow, you're just like us. There should be this moment of epiphany, this thing where you're like, wow, yeah, man, great. You're just like us. But a lot of us go to this point where we're just like, I can't believe I was so stupid. I can't believe I was so stupid for such a long time. And there's a part where you are upset. Now, you get over it very quickly, right? If you're actually in these right spaces. But this is where you have the grifters come in. And they tell you, hey, this is why you don't have success with women. This is why they hate you. This is why you're gonna die alone. And this is why it's their fault though. Take my course. I'll tell you how to get over this. I'll tell you why you don't need them. I'll tell you how to use them. Tell you how to multiple go. These are places where the grifters are inserted, where they take away that attention. They guide you down a certain path, and it becomes difficult for you to, kind of realize that this is not a guided journey. This is not a place where you go and you're going to find other people that are telling you exactly what you need to do step by step. They want to create, just like media, just like mainstream media, create you and to become a consumer. I'm building on what has already been done for you, how you've already been socialized. You want to consume because it's supposed to get you the goal. You want to chase the rainbow, there's a pot of gold. We have a cause and effect sort of like transitory thinking process. If you do this and then that, you should get where you're supposed to go. I'm going to tell you how to get where you're supposed to go. I'm going to show you what the goal is. I'm going to show you the flashy cars, the jewelry, the women, the trips, the yachts, the boats. I'm going to show you all this in your face. And you're going to think, yes, this is all I have to do. This has always been the case. This has always been the way you've been advertised. There was a thing that in the past, like Epstein files, yeah, just like Epstein files right now are slowly becoming less and less important. This thing that was completely egregious, that you had Capitol Hill yelling and screaming at each other, people losing their jobs over, and now we're talking about what? Long lines at airports. Okay. Right? And if I think I got a message maybe an hour and change ago. Trump signed an executive order to get people paid, get TSA paid, and you should automatically think, Trump, that's what's up. That's what's up. That's going to help thousands of workers, thousands of employees. This is great. How can you sign an executive order like months ago? Though? Why did people miss so many checks? Because our broken down system is not working. You could have stepped in and did this. So either side, how you want to play this. there's an avenue, there's a lane in order to get you on board. Right? It's great people can get a paycheck. Why didn't we do this before? Okay. These people getting a paycheck? Why did it take so long? And like now, who do you want to blame? You're going to be just further entrenched in the size rather than coming up for air and saying, "Let me think for myself. Let me think for myself. This matters to me. This doesn't matter to me. Just the fact that it doesn't matter to me doesn't mean that it doesn't matter to someone else. Because that matters to that person. This matters to me doesn't mean they're evil because we can't find the common ground of what we both care about the same. It shouldn't be this difficult to parse apart different points of view. But it tends to be now. As soon as you tie it to your identity, it's here you go. But when people tie that rage part of the manosphere to the identity, and the rest of us look to say, "Yo, you'll be all right." Yo, are you? Nah. What are you talking about? What are you talking? And then some of these other communities start popping up. We've always been there. We're just shining a light on them and showing, this is what's happening. This is what you believe in. This is what you see. And then you have people that are involuntarily celibate. But if you did even like a brief look at some of these things, it's not, you would think they'll all be troglodytes, but they're not. A lot of these men, like, no, you're attractive. Six pack, clean jaw, all that. But this is now your identity. So instead of knowing that you could probably find a way to fix this title, remove yourself from this title. No, it's my identity. I got to stay firmly placed here. This is how it becomes very easy. I just got to catch you in the right moment, the right time. And then here you go over here. Right? Here you go. We can take you from here to here. And I need you in this space right here. I need you right here, thinking about these things like this way, this way, this way. I mean, there's all those different labels, like someone from the kind of person you're, yeah, it's, it becomes very easy when I say the label is good. I put you over here and I say, these people are bad. Anyone I identify with those people, I got you. I got you. It's very easy to sway large swaths of people by just saying, I'm appealing to what you call yourself. You believe yourself to be this, I'm just going to appeal to that and call you that. I'm going to address that over here, over here, over here. I got you. I got you. It's not even difficult. What I say, I've said this a couple times on the channel. When you've become your own, warden, especially in the black community, we become the own warden. White man, he's got his boot on our neck for forever. No, it's a black boot. Black boot. Right? Maybe there's times when they switch off, but they shouldn't need to switch off. It should be a collective effort to say, we got to do better. We want to do better. This is how we walk ourselves out of jail. The jail cell's open, right? Or the ones that hold the keys are the one that's actually in the jail too. You can just kind of reach around the bars and open yourself, let yourself out. But it's hard when you've been taught and indoctrinated to think it in a certain way. In a certain way that this is this. Women are bad. Women are the cause of all this. And I bet good money, some plenty of stand-up women in your life. Plenty of them. You may not be attracted to them, right? They may be related to you, but doesn't that on its own indicate that you might be wrong? That this line of thinking may be the wrong line of thinking at all? But again, my identity is tied to this. It's hard for me to parse the two out. It's hard for me to break that out. This is how we find ourselves entrenched in a certain point of view and a certain way of thinking. For those that are in that rage, have to understand that people will try to use you and kind of adjust you. And it's not a thing that is just for the young people. It happens at various times whenever someone finds themselves in this place. I said in a couple of videos, and it's sometimes becomes hard to know when these things are actually posted, if they've already gone live or they're in the schedule. But when we're angry, it's easier to be angry than to deal with the underlying emotions. I'm bothered, I'm sad, I'm depressed. Well, it's easy for me to get angry. It's easy for me to lean into the red pill rage rather than saying, I think I wasted a lot of my life. It's hard for you to think, yo, this family that I fought for that I thought I fought for, that I was sacrificing for, the kids, the wife, I'm desperately miserable. I'm desperately miserable. Because in order to do the things that I was told were good things, I was told a man would do blah, 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 insert whatever. This was put in front of you, right? And that was said, this is what it is. At no point when you got your marching orders did they say, "Oh, private, what do you want to do?" You know, even the military say, "Go, come take this test. Come take this test, and let's figure out what you're good at. Let's figure out where your talents lie, or if you can be trusted to operate any of these things that are expensive and dangerous, or can you dig a latrine really well? Because I can always get a laborer, but when I need something done technical, essentially, I still need to know about you. I still need to know and say what it is that you want, and then we can sort of fashion a way to get you there. What mainstream media does in its propaganda in order to get you in line, they tell you what a good you would do. The more you deviate from that, the worse you are. You're a terrible person, and we got a different path for you. That's not you being the own warder. No, you'll physically be in jail. We've done things, and I'm guilty of it too. I've done things in my life because it was time. A real man, a good man would do this. Okay, that's what I think I am. You don't think about that. You haven't been thinking about anything. You just sort of follow the blueprint, and you're indoctrinated to it. Right? And it's probably going to be the word of the day. Um, Indoctrinate. From when you're young, we put you in school. And you remain in school for how many years? Even after high school, we say, hey, there's more schooling. Even after your undergrad, now you get your graduate and we say, hey, there's more school. But this one's optional, but it'll be really good for you. By the time you're studying for your master's is the first time when you realize it's all on you. You get to decide what you want to do. You get to decide what I want to study, what I want to specialize in, what I want the rest of my life to look like, what I want people to look and see, and I have this degree. You think that's control. You don't, you seem to forget that not that many years ago, you were raising your hand to use the bathroom. The bell will ring and determine when you were supposed to get up and sit down. It's easy to sort of look at that and piggyback on that indoctrination and say, yeah, man, this is what you're supposed to do. We don't teach this sort of independent thought. Why would we? We like having cogs in the machine. We like having you consume and then get upset that you don't have enough money to live today. When you see people saying, I make between me and my wife, we make, $250,000 a year. We're still living paycheck to paycheck. The rest of us like, yo, how? How? You don't think at some point in time he was part of the group saying, how is that person living paycheck to paycheck? You know, how they making it happen? I'm looking at it and I'm struggling. I'm making 53. They're making $200,000 more than me. If I had that, I'd be better. You don't realize that along the way, lifestyle creep, other pressures, because we have lanes for that. We have lanes to make you stop thinking, just kind of consume and spend. Yeah, and this is why I think the mainstream media is having such a reaction to the manosphere. Why they're having such a reaction to come and say, I need you to stop thinking for yourself. I need you to be more of a beta. I need you to say, okay, you show up to the airport and there's a line and you just get on it. You don't even ask what it's for. You assume, this must be, there's someone in front of me. It makes sense. For those that know, they know, this happens. We see this all the time. You're just in a line. This makes sense. Until you stop and question, like, though, what's this line for? Oh, you in first class? Oh, no, I was just standing here. You didn't ask what was going on. These are the people that it's easy to lead you. It's easy to put you on this path that we have deemed this is important. This is critical. This is where you should be. That's all it is. And I don't want to be like, hey, no, this is a conspiracy. This is a rant. But we need to, like we like to do on the channel. Right? God, where that, I recognize the name. Maybe just um, came and said, "Yo, is this, oh yeah." Kevin said, "Is this all you have to worry about in your life?" Well, we on the channel. We don't specifically just look and say it's relational, it's red pill. No, we like to look at things and use them as larger lessons. And this is a great example. Yes, someone just made programming and said, "Here, take a look," and Netflix put it forward and said, "Here, you should take a look at this." Well, take a look at it, with an open, with sort of open mind and one that's curious and questioning. Just like the content that we like to highlight. Yeah, some of it is, for fun. Some of it's like, that's kind of egregious. Some of it is a warning. But the totality of it is to get you thinking on your own so you understand what the heck is going on. So you get in the habit of saying, okay, I see that, but what else? Or if I say, well, 58 percent of men abuse children and 42% women. So I would want and I would hope that you would say, oh, okay, he's trustworthy. He hasn't really led me astray. But let me look it up. Right? Let me look it up. I looked it up. It's reversed. You wouldn't think that this is what's happening. We did the live stream. We talked about Taylor Frankie Paul um, 2 days ago, and that sort of abuse and how all that came out. Well, when you see these things, you should now look it up yourself. You've got a breadth of information at your phone. You've got the ability to look up anything, that ever happened. And we just were like, okay, I saw a post with some sad music on Instagram and then some facts on it. Okay, it must be right. And you base your entire reality on that. Never looking and saying, damn, yeah, 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 man, it's reversed. I was watching this thing and the guy was like, yo, no, Lance. He was like, no, biggest perpetrators of child abuse, the women. If you think about it for a second, doesn't that make sense? In terms of access, at least, right? In the smaller sense, in terms of access. Who has access to more children? Who are looked at as supposed to be the caregivers? Who do you make the assumptions are supposed to be looking after children? Say a woman. You'd have more opportunity at least. Then the creator, he went in to talk about how violence is visited upon by gender, right? By demographic here. Men sort of exhibit or use their their strength against men, then women, then children. Women don't do that. Their first acts of violence aren't usually against men, usually against other women. Right? If this is a thing about strength, of men abusing their strength and using that to abuse women, no, they do that with other men first. Women don't do that. So it kind of blew my mind to think about that. And I said, wait a second, let me look it up. I said, oh shit. Okay. Right? Okay. It's never going to hurt us to read some articles, to take some time and say, all right, I'm not going to scroll for the last 5 minutes. Let me look up something. I'm kind of curious. What does the data say about that? When's the last time this data was collected? I had, this was months ago. It was someone on the channel in the comments section arguing about something, you know, I think about um, childbirth in the Black community. I was saying that there's a small majority of men having more children than not. And she said, no, by this age, all these people have children. And she cited something that was from 2014, 2015, over 10 years old. And then, I just sent a link to something that was cited 2022, 2023. And then there's radio silence. Sometimes we just have to take a little bit of time. And it means that often you're going to be wrong. You're going to be wrong. You're going to miss the mark somewhere. Something that you said is wrong, but that's got to be fine. That's got to be okay. Hey, I'm wrong about this. Cool. You sharpen your argument by having the conversation, not by ducking it, not by avoiding it, not by villainizing anyone that agrees with something you don't. That brings us back to hit pieces with the Manosphere being evil, being the worst. When you selectively get upset at something you label as the problem Manosphere, you select these particular people and say, this is bad, this is evil. But anyone that's in those spaces that has a critical sort of mindset, able to think for themselves, they get to stop and say, like, wait, there are good things here. In fact, if you just tilted the lens a little bit, you'd see a lot more good, right? Sure, because the negativity sells, controversy sells, that you're going to see a lot more of that nonsense over there. Anyone with a half a brain, anyone with a quarter of a brain would look and say, why do you keep debating OnlyFans models? Hmm? Well, because the people there will call in, vilify them, right? Scream, yell, person, this, right? They're the worst. And then every one of those OnlyFans models will say, we go on the show, even though you tell us we're the scum of the earth, that none of our choices matter, that we deserve less because their subscriber count, people paying to see them, jumps through the roof. Attention matters. How you get it, you get out the mud, you get it by wrestling in the mud, doesn't matter. So we like to believe that, yeah, this is going to be the high road. This is what we think is supposed to happen. But no, you want to be outraged at what's happening here. You don't want to use your critical mind and think. And maybe you are, right? To be fair, maybe you are, because you're looking and saying, if I went and I highlighted some of these other people that are Manosphere adjacent. I went to say mediocre tutorials and reviews, and you had conversations with him, you'd get a more nuanced, balanced conversation. If Netflix invited me on to have a talk, you get a more nuanced and balanced conversation where it's not about screaming that women are evil and men, should be dominant. It's not about Sharia law. It's about, yeah, man, we got a lot of changes we can make, and we could start by having real dialogue, real conversations where people actually can hear each other. We shouldn't need moderated debates amongst regular people, but it seems to get to that point. We need conversations that are as unbiased as possible when they're supposed to come from reputable sources. But you can take away the monikers, you can take away the design sets, and people will always know what's going on, Mirza. You will always know where this programming came from because it ignores certain set of things that you can attribute and say, hey, that's good. You're rarely going to go on CNN and say, something's like, yo, what Trump did, that was all right, man. Good job. We have to appeal to our base, and our base has to think he's the worst thing. You're not going to hear people on the other side, Fox News, saying, oh, man, they made some really good points over there. Because you're too afraid of losing that momentum, that base here. You don't want them to turn off. You don't want them to start thinking for themselves and say, oh, that's actually a good point. No, I want you to focus on how silly it seems for out debating people you say never prioritize an education, who live in a small little bubble and say, well, this is what we like to do. We get money by doing this. And then you think that that is somehow going to be the best representation of this manosphere. In fact, you only looked at the worst, what we've used as the worst. You didn't look at any other person there and say, hey, this is a more respectable model. This is a person that's not as mainstream, but they're not vilified. They're not as infamous. You didn't look at this and let me go look at someone that's just kind of like even killed. It's not difficult to do. They talked about, I think MTR talked about DHS having Homeland Security having a list of creators on YouTube from the Manosphere. What would be the purpose of that? Right? Even if you wanted to look at people, to the other point, even if you wanted to look at people that were Manosphere adjacent, right? You go look at like Auburn Preach. They constantly they'll come and they'll be critical of people in Manosphere, but they're not going to tell you that doing the work is bad. They're not going to tell you that you need to have a better understanding of yourself as a man and how you interact and how you want to leave your mark on this planet. I'm not going to tell you anything bad about that. And they're huge in this space. Now, you don't even have to like it. You don't even have to be fond of the man. You could have went and talked to Anton Dimes, who's, still, making the rounds as people make more and more content about him. He's been on the news. He's been part of the mainstream media. We don't want to use that. We want to use go for the low hanging fruit. And again, HS Tikitaki's mom said, "You guys are doing the same thing." He's searching for these moments of virality so he can become popular, he can push these things, but he does not agree with some of those. There was a scene where, he's promoting these women on OnlyFans. He's like, I don't really like it. But he's essentially selling part of his soul and saying, I'm gonna do this. He's saying, yeah, that he doesn't really, if he had a son, he wouldn't want him to be gay. But he's got gay friends. And Louis Theroux's like, hey, what? He's like, no, you can he's like, you can do that. Right? And you're not allowing for any nuance because it starts to make your point kind of shaky. It starts to make that messaging very shaky, where you have to be this and not that. You have to be what we already came and conceptualized you and said, this is it. And I think the other thing about mainstream media, what they really dislike about these creators in these spaces, they have the ability to kind of just tell you what they want. When you don't have, um, when you don't have anyone in there telling you, your boss says these are the topics you can cover. You can't say anything about this. When they start talking about Israel Palestine, Luther got very quiet. And HS TikTok is like, see, I can say these things. Right? He's like, you can't. Like, yeah, this is why people have trouble trusting the media. We have the selective outrage for what we're supposed to be upset about, while ignoring the practices, ignoring that other people saw your script, read it, internalized it, and started basically saying, this is how we're going to run our sets. This is how we're going to run our plays. You have to adhere to whatever narrative that corporation believes in. You can't cover these stories in these ways. You can't maximize or short the truth behind a lot of what's happening. You have to say, okay, this is bad, cover it in this angle. The people here don't like, blah, 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 blah. You're essentially gatekeepers for information, and we don't know how important that information is. When you start saying, hey, you shouldn't be doing these things, or you're not allowed in these spaces because you have to come through it, that's where I have a bunch of people that were in that Epstein. That's how we have a bunch of people that, were legitimately committing these things with me too. These were the gatekeepers. You have to pay the toll to cross the bridge. Social media said, and got bigger than anyone anticipated. And again, big conglomerates like big media is slow to respond to these things. We're seeing their response now. They tried various little outputs. They had little segments on their platforms. You had some podcasts, now you had some newscasters saying, well, we're talking about this and how, isn't that crazy? Blah, blah, blah. You were doing the same thing mainstream social media was doing, but you were doing it late. You were doing it with waning attention. So instead of people coming and saying, oh, let me go back and pay attention to this. No, you're for ESPN. I'm gonna leave over here. I'm gonna go this way. Think about, right? And again, this is what we always try to be fond of doing here. We want you to think. Why are all these weather women hot? Why are these new newscasters attractive? You know what gets men's attention, what gets men's vote. They start looking here for this person, or at least it catches their eye. Maybe they'll come back for some of these things. It's all where I want your attention. I growing up, there wasn't so many of these hot weather women, right? You didn't platform these people and say, hey, this is important. Come take a look at this. You want to know what's going on in Ohio in the weather? Not really, but while she says it, sure. Sure. But since once that hold was broken on mainstream media and how people viewed it, what happened? They left and said, oh, my focus is now split. Now I'm watching this while watching this picture in picture while doing this. Netflix understands that very well. How many times they have to repeat the plot, because most times people on their phone, they're doing something else while Netflix on in the background. They bigger creators, bigger directors say, They don't want to produce for Netflix because it dumbs down their movies. They don't think they should have to repeat the plot over and over and over again. You're supposed to come in there, sit down in the movie theater, glued. You exchange. We had an agreement. You came here and said, I'm going to watch this movie. I'm going to give you my undivided attention. The exchange was you said, here's money. And I said, cool, come have this experience. We believe that you spent your money wisely. You're going to determine how wisely you spent it. You're going to pay attention. Today, no. If you don't hold someone's attention in the first 1.5 seconds, right? Say for like a YouTube short for TikTok or Reel, person's attention is gone. His entire data bank's full of metrics just dedicated to understanding that. You want this thing to go viral? People got to pay attention. People got to stay past that first second and a half. If you've been on the channel for a while, if you consume the content, you see it, you can see making shifts, making changes, just because this is what you got to do. The attention has changed, the algorithm has changed. The algorithm that social media has is way better in tuned than mainstream media. This is why they're slow to adapt. They use Nielsen ratings. They want to see what people, how long that TV is on what, where they pay attention to. We never, and we're about to get, more into the weeds than we usually are. When you watch, for those of us that watch, grew up on Marvel cards, right, comics, all that, DC as well, Detective Comics, all this. We understood why we were there. We liked the characters. We liked everything about these things. We enjoyed it, enjoyable. When they made them live action, we're like, cool. We enjoy this too. From Blade, right? We can take it back to Blade. I really enjoy this. The fights, it's really simple. Enjoy it. For damn near a decade, the MCU had this run where you captivated and mesmerized people's attention. You couldn't have a bad movie, as evidenced by Captain Marvel. A bad movie sandwiched between Infinity War and Endgame. Therefore, $1 billion movie. It couldn't do anything but print money at that time. Put this person in, put this in this, put this in this. As long as you were giving us a faithful telling what we liked, right? We were there. Trying to get your life routine down to the pat of that. Yeah. We sat there and we watched it. We loved it. Absolutely blown away by it. And we loved it. We committed to it. We bought it. Our tickets, comic sales went up, cars, all that. Well, you had our attention. The mainstream media said, wow, looking. Maybe we can use it and start swaying some of these people. So instead of you just giving the people what they wanted, what they came for, right? This is where the attention comes in. People came and said, here's money. I'll sit there and watch this because you promised you do this. Well, now here's the messaging in here. The message is like, no, this is wrong. This is right. You're watching a movie, Marvel movie, and then there's men kissing. You're like, how does that advance the plot? Right? Or you put in, oh, this person's gay. It weren't in the comics. It didn't matter in the comics. Right? I didn't want to see Storm fry Toad and give an epic speech before that, or confusing speech. I don't want to see that. I want to see the cool stuff. But now you're trying to tell me, well, because I have attention, I get to preach and I get to talk to you, I get to sway you a certain way. What happened? The public said, yo, you don't get to say that. And you don't get to say that by, I'm not coming to movies. You can put your message in whatever you want. They're saying, I'm no longer consume this. This is what is happening with mainstream media versus social media, versus these pockets where people are talking about the Manosphere in relative terms, where sometimes people are talking in fringe elements. You're trying to come back and say, you should listen to us because we know better. And for such a long time, they said, we already cut cable. We took the remote now in our hands and we're deciding what we want to watch. We're deciding between Netflix, HBO Max, Amazon Prime. We're deciding this is what I want to consume. This is not what I want to consume. And for the first time, media has to react to it, has to come and say, no, this is bad. And they apply the old hat, the old tricks. This is evil. Look at the worst thing of it. And this is how we label the entirety of it. As a black community, you should be able to see this and you kind of be offended by it. You are always going to be better than your regular black people. I've had that said to me growing out throughout my life so many times. Well, you're not like the others. My response is, what others? Because the circle around me, they're very much like me. We all have the little things we exceed in, all the things that we shine in, but my people, yeah, they read, they write, right? They work out, have incredible vernacular. Some of them say, hey, I want to study this. Some of them polyglots. But you just thought we were the worst of us because that's how you've been trained to think about things. That's how you've been indoctrinated to think about things. Don't like this. Here's the worst of it. There you guys go. Same thing happens when they talk about feminism, right? For men. Here are the worst examples of it. This is what it is. If you look at it, it's just like, yo, man, we want equal choice. Cool. You got it. Why would I want to tell you anything? See, I'm from New York. I don't care what you do. Don't do it in front of me. Right? That's how we kind of move. Do whatever you want. Don't do it in front of me. I want to walk right over you. You guys are kissing and making out on a filthy subway. Cool. I don't want to see it. Hey, I'm gonna go that way. Or can you take it somewhere else? Unless you're hot. And that's what's happened on a plane one time. Two women in first class making out. Hot. We stayed and watched. Okay. They put on a show, relatively empty plane. But there's neither here nor there. We're to the point where you don't have the ability to determine and control what people want to consume any longer. You have to rock with them. You have to say, that's what they want. That's what they want. You are trying to put a stranglehold on what's essentially a gaseous sort of body. You can feel like you're moving it. You can feel like you're grabbing something here or there, but that's not what's happening anymore. Um, Anything I don't want to sexually explicit stuff in it. Just lost interest. Yeah, because I've got a space for corn, right? If you're into that, you got a space for it. That's it. It's not when the Justice League is supposed to be fighting Darkseid. It's not a time to introduce this person's identity. I don't care. I want to see this fight. Not saying that they did that, right? I'm just giving you an example. I don't want Warner Brothers to come up to me when they're in the middle of fighting for this merger. That's not what I want to see. You don't need to put this in the story because it doesn't move anything. Think Eternals. If you watched it, again, it was sandwiched at the time. You're thinking you have to see this to get this. I don't care this guy's gay. Doesn't move the story about. You got to put it in me because now this has been the thing to put in. I feel like we're all little kids, when we're watching TV with our parents, and people started making out and kissing, they just close their eyes. They'll stop watching. Right? Close your eyes. No, this is the good part. Right? Yep. 5 minutes education. Yeah, they're so quick with it. They're like, yo, bro, check this out. This is important for you. You got to see this. You got to feel good about this. Check this out. No, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to watch that. I came here because I thought this is why some of the movies that I really enjoy. Say Top Gun Maverick. You can be like, oh, these know what these planes do. Cool, whatever. But it was a simple story. Hey, these guys got to do this mission. They really can't, but they're our best. You know who was the bestest of the bestest before? This guy. All right, have him train them. All right, show the training scenes. Oh, wow. There's some drama because his best friend died and that's his son. Damn, how are we going to resolve this? Maintaining this. Put them in planes together. Make them dogfight. Oh, guys, cool. All right, mission time. They still can't do it. Have them do reckless stuff. Action, action, action. Man, that's cool. He broke the rules to do it. Okay, but he's better. Okay, I guess we got to go with his plan. Make it happen. Resolve conflict. Make it happen. No messaging. No messaging. And what does that do? Money. But what's that other movie on Netflix right now with Alan Richardson? Was it War Machine? Just watched it yesterday. Simple movie. Right? Here's a cheat code with me though. You start any movie with brothers, I'm in it. You got me. Brothers, right? I hope I'm not spoiling. Brothers. Stuff happens. Make a promise to each other. Stuff happens. Yeah, I'm gonna try to fulfill it. Stuff happens. Aliens, shooting. Okay, end the movie. Good movie. Done. When you want to put in, oh man, here's this guy and he's this and he's this and he's trying to nah. Nah. And they had it was what I think it was special forces. They had a woman in there. I didn't stop and say, well, no woman is that special. I just say it was a good movie. Lot of explosions. We can go back and give you one more. One of the best Marvel movies, I think. And you separate the Marvel movies, the MC movies, and like the Avengers movies. Because I think Age of Ultron is really up there for something very simple. And not that dropping a city on a planet simple, but and then Winter Soldier. God and his best friend reunite, work on some differences. Good movie. Solid. Not a lot of messaging. Not a lot of you need this, you need that. No, it's solid. That's all you need. When you come in there and try to tell me what I should think, that's when I start thinking. But not, I'm not adhering to what you want me to think. That's what I'm thinking. What do I need this for? What do I need this for? I think this is what I think if anyone at Netflix HQ or in charge of greenlighting this movie, I think some of them are going to start thinking, should start thinking, this path isn't going to work. You can't get ahead back on a one-way street. You can't get ahead of the cars in front of you. Cars in front of you are the populace. The cars in front of you are the men thinking this way or realizing or waking up and saying, yeah, I was right. I was wrong about a lot of things. And it's a natural thing that's going to occur because people are finding that their relationship strategies are not working. They're going to keep trying to improve. They're going to keep trying to find new ways to do something. And if they fail, they're going to look for alternatives. They're going to look for solutions. And you come online, you hear people saying stuff like, yeah, men just want peace. That's it. Full stop. No bashing, right? No coming out and saying, you're wrong. I'm right. No. There's peace in the solitude. You'll get there one day if you cultivate it. Then you can try to bring someone into your life. What is wrong about that message? But again, this is not what Netflix went to try and talk about. They went to try and talk about how this and this is wrong. How you're wrong for thinking like this. Here are these things. Here are the evils. I think they missed the mark on that. I think they were right about the fringe elements. Cool. You were right to. I can't see you talk about a Manosphere and not having someone like Myron Gaines on it. Can't see you not doing that. But on the other side, where's the balancing act? And I'm saying this because it's not difficult to find. The balancing act with people saying, yeah, no, I believe in a lot of the same things. But I think that's extreme. We're not calling people out their name. We're not shaming people for some of the stuff they do, except it's really egregious. But the same thing most people look and raise their eyebrow to. Don't look at creators like that. You just want the worst and say, hey, we're used to using this. We're used to saying these things are bad. This is the easiest way to sway you guys, get you out of pocket, get you back on track where we need you to be. We need you right here. We need you consuming what we need you to consume. We need you thinking along these same lines. That way we'll find ourselves in the same sort of place. That place just kind of has a lot of control. It doesn't leave a lot of room for you to think for stuff on your own. And anyone that's advocating for you to think on your own, that can't be the wrong thing. Cannot be the wrong thing. Yeah, man needs to be a foundation and make sure he can take care of himself. And that's it. That's not out of pocket. In fact, that's not even off kilter what a lot of women say they want. You want a guy that can take care of himself, that you don't have to mother, you don't have to bother. You want a guy that's made something of himself where he can go about and make decisions. He can support the family. He can make all these things happen. Where that became a bad thing, well, we're not going to talk about those. We're not going to talk about those things that people would actually make people happy and satisfied. Because then we'd have to talk about those things. That's my take on it. Okay? I thank you guys for jumping on this impromptu live. We're still going to try to do our Sunday show at 7 Central. I just got to make sure between time differences, time zones, that I can pull that off. But either way, there should be something up for the show for the next live stream within the next 12 hours or so. So I'd love to see you guys there. The background may look different, but the messages will still be on brand. And that is, of course, anything else that you take away from this, anything else, whether or not you believe in the Manosphere, whether or not you don't believe, right? Listen, at the end of the day, protect the brand, right? Protect your mind, think for yourself, for yourself. That's all we're asking for. That's not a heavy lift. It's not a heavy ask. But again, thank you guys for your attention. And hopefully you don't take fringe things I said onto Netflix. If you do, let me know first.